Is it possible to have a legal lobbying in Ukraine?
Well, I think it is very possible, in fact, not only possible, but desirable, that there is a legal framework that underpins lobbying in Ukraine. Sophisticated economies and democracies will actually always need lobbying to be part of the process of the development of legislation and regulation.
Do you support the idea of legal regulation of lobbying activities in Ukraine?
Absolutely. I think it will help bring the process of lobbying out from the shadows into the light, and so that people can understand that lobbying can be a beneficial and transparent process in creating effective regulations and legislation that works in the real world.
What prosperities and risks are connected with it?
I think the risks that exist in developing a regulatory framework for lobbying is that the framework that's developed is actually fit for purpose, and therefore the current draft law that's been developed for the Verkhovna Rada should be subject for discussion amongst the professional lobbying community and amongst politicians and decision makers and international experts, so that the legislation that's developed can be one which can be effectively implemented in Ukraine.
Okay. Do you know about the draft law on regulation of lobbying activities in Ukraine presented by Deputy Konovalyuk to Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine?
I do, and I've had the opportunity to read it. Yeah.
Can you express your opinion to this draft law?
I think the draft law is good, although I do think that, as I mentioned a little earlier, that it really does require a little bit of further discussion amongst the expert and professional community, so that we actually end up with a piece of legislation that is capable of both, I think, regulating the process of lobbying in Ukraine, but at the same time being able to be adaptable to Ukraine's integration into the global economy. And so I think it requires it's a good draft, but it requires some further discussion.
How do you think, what country has the best experience in this sphere?
Ooh.
Tricky question.
So which country has the best experience? I think it's a very good question. You know, the countries where this process of lobbying, I'd say that lobbying is developed, highly developed in three particular countries or areas. Firstly, I would say, I think the United Kingdom has a very well-developed tradition of lobbying because it has the world's oldest parliament. The United States has a very well-developed lobbying industry, some of whom are active here in Ukraine. And I think the European Union has a very well-developed process of lobbying. Of which ones do I feel where the legislation and the programming and the understanding is best? I have to say in Brussels, because Brussels is the lobbying capital of Europe. And if I look at the way in which lobbyists have to behave in Brussels and the standards they have to perform to, then those, I think, are the highest, and those are the ones which we should look to emulate and learn from in drafting regulations on lobbying in Ukraine.